Biblical Psychology, the channel that combines psychological ideas with scripture to help you respond more effectively to the promises in the Bible with regards to mental health. And if this is the first time that you're joining us, you'll be very welcome to watch some of our previous episodes, particularly the first one that will help you to understand how useful this channel might be to you. So today we're going to be taking a look at personality disorder. And this is a diagnosis that can be found in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, commonly known as DSM-5. And the diagnosis has changed over the years, so you may have come across labels such as borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder. But generally, I believe they all amount to the same thing. So on our agenda today, we're going to take a look at what personality is, how somebody with a diagnosis such as this might deviate from common ideas about personality, take a look at some possible remedies for the condition, and then we're going to have a look at some scripture that talks about personality. So what is personality? So personality comes from the Latin word persona, which means the quality or fact of being a person. And within the field of psychology, there are models which define what personality is. And an example of that is the Big 5 model of personality traits. So you're going to see a diagram on the screen which details this model, and essentially the model talks about 5 dimensions or component parts of personality. So the first is openness, which relates to curiosity and intrigue. The other is conscientiousness, which relates to thoughtfulness. The next is extroversion, which is the extent to which a person is sociable. Then you have agreeableness, which relates to kindness. And then there's a dimension labelled neuroticism, and this relates to the person's emotional stability. And what research has found is that individuals who score highly on neuroticism scales tend to be more emotionally unstable, and those with low scores are referred to as emotionally intact. So this is the idea within psychology that presents personality in a way, and that the suggestion is that if someone adopts this kind of presentation, then they have a good personality. But somebody who's labelled with a diagnosis of personality disorder is someone who's seen as having a disordered personality. And it's interesting because this has been a concept that I've struggled with in the number of years that I've worked in mental health. And I often thought, how would someone feel if they're labelled as having a disordered personality? And it's quite a negative narrative to give to someone. And in my years of working in mental health, I've observed that it used to be the case that for individuals who attracted a label like this, that there wasn't any medical treatment for them, because how can you treat medically a disordered personality? But over the years, as psychological research has progressed, more ideas to help understand this presentation has emerged. And there was a publication from the British Psychological Society called Understanding Personality Disorder, and in that publication it details about psychological trauma being one reason why people would develop a personality disorder. But anyway, so just going back to this model, people who attract this diagnosis so might be perceived as being quite the opposite to what a normal personality should look like. So instead of openness, they might be dishonest or manipulative. Instead of being conscientious, they might present as being quite selfish or aggressive, or instead of being extrovert and sociable, they might be antisocial. And some people who have a criminal history, for example, have been labelled as such. And instead of being agreeable, they might be quite cold and horrid, and they would score quite highly on neuroticism scales. And you can imagine that mental health practitioners who have worked with individuals who attract this label find the work very challenging, and working in a culture, for example, where it's perceived that these individuals can't be treated, you can imagine that the practitioner might be influenced by this view and feel quite helpless that they're unable to help them. So just going back to some of the causes of this, and as I mentioned earlier, more psychological ideas have emerged to help to understand why someone will present in this way. So on your screen, you'll see a number of ideas which have been suggested, and these have been taken from biological ideas, psychological, social and environmental influences. So we haven't got time to go into all of them in detail, so I'll just select a few just to illustrate what I'm meaning. So, for example, a biological cause for a personality change or disorder could be if someone has sustained a brain injury, and that could, suffering with a brain injury can change somebody's personality. So, and looking at psychological reasons, I mean, psychological trauma is quite a big one, and I would argue that it would account for the reasons why people would experience this condition. And there are also social and environmental influences, like sort of family background. So if someone comes from a family where someone or numerous people have this diagnosis, it's likely to also impact upon their development in a similar way. And fortunately, unlike previously, where these individuals were seen as not as being untreatable, there are a number of psychological interventions available, and these have included things like dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, or a cognitive behavior therapy, or trauma-informed therapy. There's quite a variety of treatments now that a person can access in order to recover from this condition. So now I'm going to have a look at some scriptures to see what the scripture says about personality. So the first is taken from Psalm 1 verse 1 to 2, which states, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night." And that's a lovely verse. I think what it's highlighting there, it's highlighting certain characteristics which someone with a diagnosis of personality disorder might present with. So, for example, it talks about standing in the way of sinners, and what that means is doing bad things that other bad people do, and sitting in the seat of the scornful, so somebody who's quite scornful and loves gossip and really backstabs other people. So it's given certain characteristics that it's saying that blessed is he who doesn't do those things, but rather meditates on the law of the Lord. So in Proverbs 11 verse 2, it states, "When pride comes, then comes shame, but with the lowly is wisdom." And so what that's just highlighting there is, so someone who's very proud, is very pompous and thinks that they're better than anybody else, puts their own needs first before they do others. And these are another examples of characteristics that the Bible is saying such individuals will come to shame eventually. But when you have when you're quite humble, then you can encounter wisdom. So just having a look at Proverbs 6 verse 16 to 19, it states that these 6 things does the Lord hate, yes, are an abomination to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that is swift in running mischief, a false witness that speaks lies, and he that sows discord among brethren. And I think that that passage is quite self-explanatory, and again it's presenting characteristics that people with a label of personality disorder would present with, and it's actually saying that God hates those things. And if we have a look at 1 Corinthians 13 4 to 7, it says, "Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast and is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly, seeks not her own, is not easily provoked, is not puffed up, thinks no evil, rejoices not in iniquity or sin, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." So in that passage, it's giving a description of the character of God. And the Bible talks about being partakers of the divine nature. So when one is born again, by the Spirit, one automatically has this character within them, which unfolds over time. And so what the Bible is suggesting there is that this, a personality of love, an expression of love, is the one to have. So that's all I would like to say today on personality disorder. And I hope you would have picked up something that might have helped you along your way to recovery. And please don't forget to subscribe, because that way you'll be notified of all the future episodes coming up. Bye-bye.